Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be here. I just came from the airport, so forgive me, my time is a little bit late. And basically, I'm happy to be here because research policy transfer and bridging that gap, I think that's kind of my mission. I think I've never done anything else in my academic life. And I've always researched peace processes. So what works, what does not work, especially when it comes to inclusion and participation of different actors in these processes. And a year ago, I founded this Inclusive Peace and Transition Initiative because we got so many requests to share this research that actually this gap was not the Grand Canyon, but I feel myself like jumping, like every day like this. In the last 3 weeks, I visited 5 countries, sat on so many panels, advised so many organizations that I feel like, would this gap be bigger? I would have more time to just write. so it's like also, I tell you why we should address this gap. There's 2 main reasons. A, it's so exciting. It's really exciting. But I tell you something, there's a warning here. It's really exhausting. It's really exhausting. And I have not found out how we better, and I think that's why we have to have these exchanges here, how we also better cope when we actually are listened to. Because I tell you, it's not easy to cope with that. And so I wanted to start telling you in the Inclusive Peace and Transition Initiative, where we have a mandate now to do that in an academic institution to do this transfer. And let's just give you a glimpse of the last 4 weeks. 4 weeks ago, I moderated a panel at the UN General Assembly where our research on the role of women in peace processes was discussed. And basically, our research was quoted 38 times as very innovative. And everybody has said, it's about the influence women need to have in peace processes, not the presence. And that was exactly our research findings. So in just 1 year, we had changed the discourse on how policymakers were dealing with the issue. And then 3 weeks ago, we have been requested to now contribute to the new prevention study of the World Bank and UNDP. We just finalized 2 weeks ago a 20-case study piece on national dialogues for the next guidance note on UN mediators. But the most exciting thing for me is always the process support that we give to peace processes, where we have basically supported the Syrian peace negotiations, the ones in South Sudan, the ones in Yemen, and lately in Colombia. My kids would say, can you give us any positive examples of your work as well, please? Yes, Nepal was not too bad. I mean, before it collapsed, Sri Lanka was also at the time not too bad. So I learned to justify myself. But Colombia was really exciting. So when I came there the day after the no vote, as you might remember, I was about to come to advise basically on the implementation of the peace agreement that then would not happen because there was a no vote. In 3 days after I arrived, I was invited to the Office of the President to present our comparative research on what happens after no votes and what the government can do now and what type of negotiations it should be engaged. So how come? How come that this research is so wanted? And I am really glad that Eileen forced me to come here. I mean, she does that in a very nice way, of course. And because I had to start thinking about it, and that's why my PowerPoint is also not fancy, because I just started thinking about it in the plane. And I have 7 reasons why I think our research is so wanted. Number 1 is conviction. And I think that's something we have not heard yet. I was socialized in peace research when I was a PhD student. My professors told me peace research was created because we wanted to change the world. We wanted to contribute. We want not just sit in the journals. So it was kind of put into my brain from the beginning, I need to do something. So I always felt responsible and felt like we need to do something. The second is we need to get out, and we have heard that from you just now. We need to get out of our comfort zone and from time to time force ourselves to work in policy. I worked for the EU, I worked for the UN. I suffered through this. Really, I suffered through it. And you know what I'm talking about. I was just so loved to just write a book. But my colleagues encouraged me, just keep on going, you will learn so much. And that's true. I can do my work very different because I know how the other side. Would you take a translator who knows only one language? Never. So the third reason is, and that's a known thing, we have to have the right research questions. But how do we get it? Because if you, for example, want to do a research that is really hot now, nobody will listen to you in 2 or 3 years. So how do we know what is really important in 2 or 3 years? We talk to policymakers, we engage. And what I do is in my research, I have a research advisory group of policymakers and practitioners attached to the research. And that group basically works with me and tells me, not just like our women research, we found that women are changing peace processes and have more peace negotiations signed and implemented when women basically, this is the map of all the countries where we have data on. Basically, when women are contributing, it's not their presence, it's their influence. So the policymaker will tell you, oh, that's interesting, we can do advocacy with that. But the details of what makes influence, that's the qualitative research we do. And that is really helpful in processes. We have helped empower Syrian women to sit at the table and knowing what to say, knowing what to demand because of that type of research, where we know all the nitty-gritty details. And we are often invited to design processes because we have all these nitty-gritty data. Okay. The next point is the quality of your research has to be excellent. So it cannot just be a commissioned study that looks a little bit here, a little bit there. It's because the data is solid, it's based on comparative evidence, and it's because we have so many. When I talked, for example, to senior mediators about, often after this women's study, I had never done anything on women before, but suddenly I became the expert on it. And then we were, of course, invited a lot, for example, to talk to senior mediators. How can more women be involved? And they would say like, well, you know, it's this normative thing. Yeah, tell us, is there really evidence? And we say like, well, there's no evidence actually that more presence, and they're like, no evidence, we knew it. And you say like, but then look, in all those countries, when women had influence, and then there was more peace agreement signed, so you better make sure that they have influence and not just get them at the table. And then they say like, well, if there's evidence, so it's the power of evidence. The other point is, I think that's a very important point, how you get your research design right in terms of the requirements of policy. Because if you, for example, know in 2 years is a very important international summit where you have research you can fit into, what do you do as a research director? Do you engage with 5 PhDs to solve the problem? No, because they take longer. Do you engage with senior researchers or even with master students? You have to design your research according to the needs. The next point is, how do you actually, and we heard about that, that's the crucial point, how do we create demand? Why do people call me? Yeah? Because of my curls? No. They call because we have all sorts of means. Like, we also have a blog, we have a web page with data, we have targeted newspaper articles, we have the bigger studies, we have books, but we have also the 4 pages. But the most of all, and interestingly, my theory of change was books don't help, they don't read it. I get so many requests because of this civil society and peace building book. So it's also not really sure. What is it, what works, what doesn't work. But most of all, what we see, what we really influence is because we have regular exchange with our main partners and donors on their entry points to change in different conflict zones, in different policy processes. And they will tell us there's an upcoming resolution and your research fits. Can you please provide something? And then we tell them, and you know, we are involved in this. I mean, Office of the President. Maybe do you want to drop something at the president's office? We can do that for you. So, I mean, it's a two-way story. And that's important. It's permanent exchange, and that takes time. The other point is really like rigorous, like using of entry points. With that woman study, we had not even screened the data on women. And then a good academic would have first written something up, put it into a journal. No, we delayed that. What does it mean? One very important message, we have to park our academic egos because our egos stand in our way. If my ego is also pleased when I publish in the Harvard Negotiation Journal. Yes. But we have to postpone that if we have a chance to have influence. And that is important. So park your ego is very important. Then the last point I would like to make is rigorous monitoring. So we monitor the impact we have. If we do a two-pager out, what happens with that? How many requests we are getting? How many languages it's translated later? How many times is the blog downloaded? And so on and so forth. So we want to know that. We interview people of the impact of our work. To finalize, I still think we can try all these different, what I call them, avenues of transfer. Last week I talked to a donor, and I'm not American, so I'm not good in pitching. So I explained, like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and this. And she's like, stop. I mean, I've understood. What you do is really important. But I have by no means understood what you are as an institution. And I think that is also my part, because I'm not good enough at pitching. But the other thing is really that, what is that intermediate space? What are we? We are research institutes. We are also sort of advisors, but we're not consultants. So what are we? I think we have to find this way. But I think what I know and what I want you to all become is responsible scholars who want to change the world. Thank you.